I was halfway through my morning coffee when my phone started buzzing against the marble countertop. At first, I ignored it. I'd gotten used to silence. Peace was something I earned, not something I owed. But when the screen lit up with my mother's name, I froze. We hadn't spoken in almost 5 years. The message was short. "It's your brother. He's in the hospital. It's bad. Please come home." For a second, everything around me blurred. The faint hum of the city outside my penthouse, the reflection of sunlight off the glass, even the aroma of my vanilla latte. I could almost feel my heart clenching the way it used to when I still believed them. My fingers trembled as I set the phone down. 5 years of distance, of rebuilding, of finally feeling whole, and with one text it all threatened to collapse. I walked to the window, watching the skylines stretch endlessly. From up here, I'd built a life no one could touch. But that name, my family, still had a way of piercing through every layer of calm I'd constructed. "Don't fall for it," I whispered to my reflection. But my chest tightened anyway, because no matter how much money I'd earned, no matter how far I'd gone, part of me still wanted to believe they cared. And that tiny, foolish hope was enough to make me pack my bag. I was 22 the night everything fell apart. The air in our old Virginia house was thick with tension, and the smell of my mother's lavender candle couldn't hide the bitterness that hung between us. My father had been gone 3 months. His sudden heart attack had cracked the family open like glass. We were gathered around the dining table, the one with the chipped edge where I used to do my homework. My older brother, Caleb, had a folder in front of him, full of papers that looked too official for grief. "Dad's will was clear," he said, avoiding my eyes. "The inheritance should stay in the family, meaning with me, Mom, and the house." I remember laughing dry, stunned laughter that hurt my throat. "I am family, Caleb." He shrugged, like I was some distant relative, not the sister who used to bandage his knees when he fell. "You're leaving anyway, right? Running off to New York with your big dreams. You don't need this." Mom didn't say a word. She just sat there, staring at her tea, stirring it long after the sugar had dissolved. That silence said everything. I pushed back my chair, my pulse pounding in my ears. Dad wanted me to have a choice. He told me that. Caleb slid the folder toward him protectively. "You're emotional. You're not thinking clearly." That's when I realized they'd already decided. The money, the property, the business, everything my father had built, they wanted it locked away from me. Because I wasn't the obedient daughter who stayed close and quiet. I was the one who dared to leave. I walked out that night with a suitcase, a few $1,000s my father had quietly transferred to my name, and the small gold compass he used to keep on his desk. Engraved on the back were his words, "Find your own north." That compass became my lifeline. Every time I felt lost, every time doubt whispered that maybe they were right, I'd run my fingers over that engraving and remind myself I was meant to go. I didn't look back when the front door slammed behind me. I didn't cry until the bus pulled away and our house disappeared in the distance. That night, somewhere between anger and heartbreak, I made a promise to myself. I would never need them again. New York didn't welcome me with open arms. It greeted me with rain, noise, and rent I couldn't afford. I crashed on a friend's couch in a one-bedroom apartment in Queens, living off instant noodles and leftover diner tips. Every night, I'd take out my father's compass, tracing my thumb over the engraving until my heartbeat slowed. Find your own north. For the first few months, I worked 3 jobs, waitressing, cleaning offices, and freelancing as a junior designer for anyone who would pay $50 for a logo. It wasn't glamorous, but it was mine. There were nights I cried on the subway, exhausted and invisible. But each tear came with a spark of something new, determination. Then came her, Amelia Shaw, founder of a boutique marketing firm in Brooklyn. She was everything I wanted to be, sharp, composed, respected. I'd sent her my portfolio on a whim, expecting it to vanish into some HR void. Instead, she called me the next day. "I don't usually take chances on beginners," she'd said, her tone brisk but kind. "But I see fire in your work. Show me you can keep up." That chance changed everything. Under Amelia's guidance, I learned what real discipline meant. She pushed me harder than anyone ever had, but she also believed in me when no one else did. I'd stay late perfecting campaigns, studying brand psychology, learning the art of persuasion. Within 2 years, I was managing my own clients. Within 4, I opened my own small firm, North Creative Agency, named after the words on my father's compass. The first client who signed a 6-figure contract with me didn't know that I still shared a studio apartment, or that I celebrated with takeout pizza and cheap champagne. The second client didn't know I still had student loans and fear of failure coiled in my gut. But by the 5th client, everything shifted. My work started attracting attention, big brands, influencers, startups. I was no longer surviving. I was building. I moved into a glass-walled office overlooking the city. I bought a car, then a penthouse. I donated quietly to charities my father once supported, never signing my name. On social media, I posted simple updates, a coffee cup, a skyline, nothing more. Let them think I was still finding myself. Because power moves quietly. And I wanted mine to speak only when the time was right. Sometimes, late at night, I'd still get the urge to call home, to hear my mother's voice, to tell her I made it. But then I'd remember the silence at that dinner table, the way she chose comfort over me. So, I'd close my eyes, hold the compass, and remind myself, they chose to lose me. I just chose to win. By the time I landed back in Virginia, my stomach was a tight knot of unease. The message had said hospital, but when I arrived at the address my mother had texted, it wasn't the sterile white of an air. It was their house. Our old house. The porch light flickered dimly in the late afternoon sun, and the same wind chime from my childhood sang a hollow tune. I hesitated at the door, suitcase still in hand. For a second, I thought maybe it was a misunderstanding. Maybe my brother was resting inside, recovering, and this was just their way of keeping him home. Then the door opened. Caleb stood there, perfectly fine. No bandages. No hospital gown. Just him, older, heavier, wearing the same smug smirk he'd perfected years ago. "Liv," he said, like no time had passed. "You came." My pulse thudded. "You're not in the hospital." He shrugged. "I was feeling dizzy earlier. False alarm, I guess." Behind him, I saw my mother appear from the kitchen, clutching her teacup just like before. "Olivia, sweetheart, you look wonderful," she said, smiling too warmly, too easily. That's when I knew. It wasn't about sickness. It was a setup. I stepped inside slowly, the air thick with stale perfume and old resentment. My father's photograph still hung over the mantel, his steady gaze the only honest thing left in that room. Mom gestured to the sofa. "Sit, honey. We just wanted to talk. We haven't seen you in years." "Talk about what?" I asked. Caleb exchanged a look with her, then said, "It's about Dad's estate. Some legal things have come up, tax issues, you know how it is. We just thought since you've done well for yourself, maybe you could help. You did get a portion after all." I almost laughed. After all these years, they still thought I was small enough to manipulate. I set my bag down and straightened my blazer. "Help? You mean hand over what's left of my inheritance?" "Don't be dramatic," Mom sighed. "It's not like that. Family helps family." I met her eyes. "Family doesn't fake medical emergencies to talk, Mom." The silence that followed was sharp enough to cut glass. Caleb's jaw tightened. "We just needed you here. You've been avoiding us." I tilted my head, calm but cold. "You made it easy to avoid you." Then, slowly, deliberately, I reached into my purse and pulled out a slim black folder, one with embossed gold lettering, North Creative Holdings. I set it on the coffee table. "That's my company," I said quietly. "I own 4 subsidiaries now. We employ 87 people across 3 states. I came here because I thought you were dying, not because I owe you a dime." Their faces shifted, from annoyance to confusion to disbelief. Caleb blinked. "You're kidding." I smiled faintly. "You always underestimated me. I made every cent of my inheritance multiply. Without your help. Without this house. Without either of you. Mom sank into her chair, staring like she didn't recognize me. Olivia, how? With hard work, I said simply. And with the motivation of knowing my family thought I'd fail. The room fell quiet again, only the clock ticking between us. I took a breath, smoothing my silk sleeve, my voice calm but final. You lied to me, manipulated me. But I'm not the same girl who left this house broke and heartbroken. I came back because you said someone was dying. Turns out only your conscience is. I stood, picking up my bag. For the first time, they didn't have anything to say. Just silence, and the weight of everything they'd lost the moment they pushed me away. I should have walked out right then. But something inside me, some stubborn mix of anger and closure, made me stop halfway to the door. I turned back to face them, my hand still gripping the compass in my pocket. Caleb stood stiff, arms crossed, pretending he wasn't embarrassed. My mother, on the other hand, looked small for the first time in my life. The color had drained from her face, her voice barely above a whisper. We didn't know you were doing so well, Olivia. We thought maybe you could help us get back on our feet. Things haven't been easy since your father passed. I took a slow breath. You mean since you cut me out? Her eyes glistened, but I didn't flinch. You both made choices, I said. Now I get to make mine. I sat down, my voice steady, professional. If I'm going to help at all, it'll be on my terms. Caleb scoffed. What, you're going to make us sign contracts now? Actually, I said coolly, yes. I opened my laptop and pulled up a file I'd been working on for months, ironically titled Family Redemption. I hadn't planned to use it. Not until now. I'll invest in fixing up Dad's old property. I'll even help you pay off the tax debts, I said. But only if you agree to 3 conditions. Caleb rolled his eyes, but I continued. First, no more manipulation. Ever. If I even sensed a seed again, I'm done. You'll lose everything, including the business license I plan to reinstate for Dad's company. He opened his mouth to protest, but I held up a hand. Second, you both get real jobs. Honest ones. I'll fund training programs, but you'll work for your income. No more living off sympathy. Caleb frowned. You can't just. I can, I interrupted, calm but sharp. And I will, because I've done it myself. My mother's voice cracked. And the third, I softened, just slightly. You start therapy. Family counseling, individual sessions, whatever it takes. You need to face the reasons you hurt people who love you. Until then, money won't fix a thing. She stared at me for a long moment, tears gathering. You sound just like your father, she whispered. Something inside me eased, a knot finally loosening. Good, I said quietly. He was the only one who ever believed I'd find my own way. I closed the laptop and stood. I'll have my lawyer send the contracts tomorrow. If you agree, we start over. If not, I shrugged. This conversation never happened. For once, Caleb didn't argue. He just nodded, jaw tight, shame flickering beneath his pride. My mother reached for my hand, tentative, trembling. Thank you, sweetheart, she murmured. I looked at her, then gently pulled away. Don't thank me yet. Just do better. And as I walked toward the door, I felt it, the power shift. Not loud, not vengeful. Just quiet certainty. This time, I wasn't leaving as their daughter. I was leaving as the woman they'd tried to break, and couldn't. Weeks passed before I heard from them again. When my mother finally called, her voice was softer, hesitant, almost unfamiliar. We signed the contracts, she said. And Caleb started working at one of the construction sites you funded. He's exhausted, but he's trying. I didn't say much, just listened. There was no gloating in me anymore. The satisfaction came not from revenge, but from the quiet knowing that I'd changed the story's ending. A month later, I drove back to Virginia, not to check on them, but to visit my father's grave. The autumn air smelled like pine and memory. I brought coffee instead of flowers. He'd always said he preferred caffeine to sentimentality. Sitting by the headstone, I reached into my coat pocket and pulled out the gold compass. The metal was warm from my hand, its engraving still clear. "Find your own north." "I did, Dad," I whispered. "And it led me right back here, but stronger." In the distance, I could see the outline of our old house. Fresh paint, new windows, a small sign out front reading "Under restoration." Maybe they really were trying. Maybe this time, they'd rebuild something honest. I thought about everything it took to get here. The nights of doubt, the sting of betrayal, the battles fought alone. Every scar had shaped the woman I was now, self-made, calm, and unshakably free. When I stood to leave, the wind brushed against my hair like a quiet thank you. I smiled, tracing the compass one last time before slipping it back into my bag. Some stories end with forgiveness, some with justice. Mine ended with both. As I walked toward my car, sunlight cut through the trees, landing on the road ahead, bright, endless, and mine to follow. In that moment, I realized something beautiful. My family didn't define my worth. They only reminded me how much I could survive. And as the engine hummed to life, I said the words I'd been holding for years, soft but certain, words that felt like a closing chapter and a new beginning all at once. They called me home to take what was mine. But what they didn't know was that I'd already claimed everything I needed myself. Bottom of form.